No one really saw her, not with intention, not with humanity. Under the biting heat of twin suns and the stale hiss of filtered air, the trading post at Mira's End stayed crowded, loud, and ruthless. A place built on steel and desperation, where the outer systems came to barter life itself. The drifting edge of the core's old shipping routes pulsed through here, sluggish and thick with greed. Once a hub of movement and means, now just a scar in the stars, still bleeding profit from pain. Flashing vids line the towers in a constant loop, offering up everything from armored guardians bred to kill, to specimen companions trained to please, all with fake smiles and vacant stares. Every vendor yelled about how programmable, how obedient, how customizable their products were. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Sir stood. Still, silent, the air smelled of sweat, grease, and nerves, all woven together into something weighty and sour. Beneath her bare feet, the platform trembled with the shuffling of buyers, shifting like livestock at auction. Lines of beings, scaled forms, furred frames, metal, tethered limbs stood roped in beside her, each one tagged. Each one broken in some way. Traders stalked between them like barbers at a meat market, checking methodically. Teeth, eyes, pulse. Sir barely earned a glance, too thin, too strange, too unspoken. Her skin, faintly jade in tone, shimmered subtly in the sunlight, veins of biolight arcing along her collarbone and wrists, writhing in slow pulses like the shell of a sleeping creature. Her hair was a tangled sheet of silver, gray, unwashed. Her thin frame was draped in red, dusted, ceremonial scraps, remnants not even the seller could name. Some remembered clothes like hers worn by palace pages from forgotten systems, symbols of service to long, extinct houses. But this wasn't about honor anymore. This was survival. Her value was dropping by the minute. The seller, a broad-shouldered Yekran male with cyberin, handsed arms and a violence, stained grin paced like a war, Nout Barker. His voice rang out, hoarse with old aggression, rare origin, intact mind frame, no prior handlers, quick learner, just needs the right reset, clean neural slate. It was nonsense. He didn't know her name, not even her species. No one here did. Her place of birth had been avalanched out of the star charts cycles ago, wiped away in dust and war. Even her classification on the lots database was reduced to unknown class bipedal humanoid, compatible. One merchant wearing a long cape of synth flaced past without stopping. Too brittle, he muttered under his breath, looks like she doesn't eat, scanned her, barked another, female voice wearing layered armor with jeweled edges. Lagging, the seller was sweating through the artificial fabric of his jacket, no issues, clear responses, no disease markers, smells like neuro-blockers, one noble spat. She off her suppressants, they're just wearing off, easy dose fix, the seller lied, still, no buyers stopped in earnest. No bids, no scans, she was invisible, even the drones barely hovered near. When one passed and shone a blue light into her eyes, she didn't flinch. Didn't blink, she simply stood, soft breathing lost beneath the shouting and heat. Her gaze stayed low, focused nowhere. Her stance wasn't submissive, and it wasn't proud. It was just absent. Inside, her mind wandered, spiraled. Trained into silence, taught to expect nothing, demand even less. But even now, pieces of memory curled up through her thoughts. An echo of open skies, laughter on warm wind, the feel of someone's hand brushing her cheek in kindness long ago. Or maybe it was just the mind playing tricks, building illusions to survive collapse. Her cellar exploded suddenly, arms flailing. Forget it, just take her, free, no tags, she's more trouble than she's worth. I need her out of the lot. Buyers ignored him. Even here, where value was measured purely in how well you broke, she was left untouched. Then the air shifted. It wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just changed. A new presence entered the auction square. Stillness followed him like a shadow. A current of space parting around motion. Sir noticed it before she even looked. The rare sensation of someone noticing her back. Not staring, not inspecting, just aware. She raised her gaze. He was human. Of all the species she'd learned to avoid, humans were the wild card. Explosive when angry, soft in moments that made no sense, prone to extremes, she trusted them least, but feared them just as much. This one didn't carry the air of a conqueror. His jacket was sun, dusted and fraying near the seams. The boots he wore were lined with red dirt from the dry moons around the system. His gray eyes studied her without flinch, without calculation. He didn't scan her. He didn't approach with hunger or disdain in his expression. He simply looked like she was a person, not a product. The seller lit up, desperate. Hey, you want her. I mean, have at it, really. No charge. She's your problem. No scanner fees, no sync logs. Just go. The human said nothing at first. Then, in a voice quiet as thunder, she's not creepy. She looks like someone who's never been treated as real. The seller shrugged, desperate to close a non-existent deal. You want to hand out favors? There's a shelter booth on the lower ring. I'll take her, the man said. Calm, absolutely certain, no trace, tags, no data clone, no salvage mark, just transfer possession and wipe the record. The seller hesitated, then practically threw the ownership link reel at him. The man confirmed with a thumb press. Just like that, it was settled. She was legally his. The man didn't tug her chain. Didn't touch her roughly. He met her eyes again. You can walk, he said. So she did. The crowd rippled slightly as they passed, whispering. But no one stopped them. No voices followed. No drones trailed. No system barks to halt transit. He didn't speak until they were clear of the market. The sounds of loading docks and fiery engine bursts rose in the distance, carrying ships towards stars and storage. Still, the man turned his back on the port and led her instead toward the quieter hills. Dusty rock and wind, nudged grass. I'm Kaylin, he said as they walked, that's all. She didn't answer, not yet. They reached a structure curled into the stone, more functional than pretty. Spare wires along the wall, old timber beams reinforced with dark metal. Panels buzzed with quiet energy from a sunbank overhead. Lights flickered warm inside. A bolt lock clicked as he opened the door. You can come in if you want. Inside, the air smelled of spice and solder and something faintly herbal. He didn't lead her to chains, didn't signal any commands. Instead, he gestured towards a simple room. Linens folded neatly, water basins shined. A small shelf bolted into the wall, nothing luxurious, but everything clean. I made stew, he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. There's food if you're hungry. If not, that's all right too. She sat on the edge of the bed, as still as she had stood out there under the market lights. Still expecting it. Pain, command, punishment, something, but it didn't come. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she sat alert in silence, listening, braced. Nothing happened. The next morning, food reappeared. Soft bread with steam rising from the loaf, a touch of spice on the stew. Salt, real salt. He moved quietly, always giving space as he passed. By the third sunrise, something had shifted again. The silence wasn't suspicious anymore. It wasn't waiting for a strike. It had turned into rest. That evening, Kaylin came in with a small bundle. Delicate flowers, half wild, petals in soft shades of violet and white, little golden centers. He placed them in an old jar beside her makeshift bed. Reminded me of your eyes, he murmured. She stared at them, unmoving. Waiting for the catch, but none came. He didn't ask her to smile, didn't seek thanks. He set them down gently and left the room as if what he did was perfectly ordinary. But it wasn't, and something inside her chest, something long frozen, twitched. Later, she cried for the first time since she'd forgotten what tears even felt like. Quiet, confused tears, not because of pain, because of memory, because of feeling. When he returned and saw her, he didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just settled on the floor beside the bed, far enough not to crowd her, close enough that she could feel the presence of someone. Safe, you don't owe me anything, he said, his voice steady. clear, and for the first time since her world fell apart, Sir believed him. Just a little enough. You're not here to serve, you're here because no one else saw you, and I did. Her throat locked. The words she wanted to say, whatever they were buried deep under layers of silence and fear and memory, but the tightness in her chest loosened just a little. It hurt in a different way, not like pain, like healing, like something old and Brock had begun without permission to stitch itself back together. Sarah still didn't understand him. She didn't know what humans were supposed to be, but this one didn't treat kindness like currency, and that made him dangerous and maybe, just maybe, worth trusting for now. The warning came with the air long before the clouds rolled in or the sirens sounded from the lower ridges. Sir felt a shift in pressure, a tingling at the base of her spine. Her skin reacted before her mind could catch up. Bioluminescent threads along her arms flickering in a slow, uneasy pulses. Oscar had left the main hatch open while working on the external generator. He was halfway through adjusting the cooling fans when she stepped out silently onto the front step. He looked up at the sky. You feel it too. Hush. She didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. Hills in the distance were swallowed by a dark, low mass of storm clouds, heavy with static. Twin bolts of lightning cracked across the upper atmosphere. Electric, violet, and unnatural. Oscar stood up and wiped his hands on his shirt. Plasma storm, probably nasty one by the look of it. Sarah stepped backward, her heel brushing the threshold. Her breath was uneven, chest rising too fast. The wind picked up, laced with a sharp scent of charged particles and old metal. She knew that smell, that sound. She remembered the last time, not a dream, not a vision, memory. The rattling of a steel cage bolted to the side of a slaver ship, the groaning of engines straining through turbulence, the storm hitting harder than forecasted, and then blackout. The power failed, the sedatives wore off too fast, the lights flickered. Screams rose through the darkness like sirens underwater. One of the guards slipped on the deck and hit his head. Another fired his weapon blindly into the cages. They didn't understand what storms did to her kind. Oscar noticed the way she stiffened, the way her pupils widened, and her breath shortened. He set the wrench down. Hey, he said gently, come inside. She didn't move. Storm's going to hit hard. I've got a reinforced shelter below. The house will be fine, but you need to come with me. Still nothing. Her body remained frozen in that old memory, her mind replaying what it had learned too well when lightning struck. Pain followed always. Oscar didn't touch her, didn't push. Instead, he walked past her and pulled open the trap door at the side of the house. I'm going down now, he said, voice even it not locked. You can come if you want. Then he disappeared down into the shelter, leaving the hatch open behind him. Seconds passed, then a minute, then another. When the first blast of thunder shook the sky, Sarah bolted inside. She didn't think. She just moved, feet pounding down the stairs into the dim metallic chamber, where Oscar had already lit a lantern and set out 2 blankets on the floor. She pressed herself into the farthest corner of the shelter and sank to her knees, arms wrapped tightly around her chest. The walls vibrated with the storm's arrival. Outside, wind clawed at the roof, the sound of it. A deep, low roar was too familiar. Oscar sat across from her, calm but watchful. He said nothing, no questions, no commentary. After a few minutes, he leaned his head back against the wall and started talking, not to her exactly, just into the space. First storm I ever saw was on news for open skies, flat land. The lightning moved like it was hunting something it took out. Our cows burned half our crop and knocked a cargo hauler out of the air. His voice was steady, grounding. Sir kept her head down, but she was listening. I was 10, and he continued, my brother thought it was exciting. I thought it was. End of the world. Spent the whole night curled up in the grain silo. I didn't sleep for 2 days. After he paused, then you ever get that, like your body remembers before your brain catches up. Sir finally looked at him slowly. Whaley. Yes, she said one word, but it was enough. He nodded once. Makes sense. The storm surged again, and the lights flickered. The shelter shuddered with the impact. Sarah flinched hard, her hands gripping the edge of the cot. Her breathing ragged. Oscar stood up and moved, but not toward her. He grabbed a folded tarp from the corner and spread it near her feet, then sat down beside it, leaving a clear space between them. I'll stay here, he said, in case you need me. She stared at him, not with fear now, but confusion and something like disbelief. He didn't demand her trust. He didn't touch her. He simply stayed. Time passed. The worst of the storm screamed overhead, but inside the shelter felt different now. The air was still tight, but not suffocating. Oscar had filled it with presence. Not pressure eventually. Sir's posture loosened. She sat back, no longer curled in on herself. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, but clear. We were trained to feel everything, every current of emotion. Every shift in tone or thought. It made us good healers, good memory bears. But when storms came, we couldn't block anything out. Oscar didn't interrupt. We panic overload. Some of us broke. He looked at her. Gently, but you didn't know, she said, not completely. Then she whispered, but I'm tired of surviving. Oscar's voice softened. Then maybe it's time to live silence again. But this one didn't hurt. It wrapped around them like a sheer blanket. After a while, she asked, why do you live alone, Oscar? He gave her a sad smile. Because when I was with people, I was always trying to fix what I couldn't save, and now. I fix what's in front of me. S looked down at her hands. The faint green glow from her skin had dimmed. Her fingers didn't tremble anymore. I'm not something broken, she said, almost like a warning. Oscar met her gaze. I know, that's why I'm still here. Thunder cracked, and for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. The storm passed just before dawn. When they climbed out of the shelter, the air was wet and heavy, but the sun was already burning through the clouds. Sir turned her face to the sky. She didn't smile, but she didn't hide either. Oscar offered her a cup of hot water. She took it. Something had changed, not fixed, not solved, but changed, and for the first time Sir realized she might not have to face the galaxy alone. Oscar was humming again, a low, tuneless melody, barely more than a breath, drifting from the corner of the workshop where he crouched over a busted power cell. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, grease smudged across his forearm. Sir stood at the threshold watching. Silently, she'd started doing that more often lately, not hiding, not quite participating, just being present. The storm had passed 2 days ago, but its aftermath lingered in her, the kind of silence that came after surviving something you weren't sure you'd live through. But he never brought it up, never mentioned her shaking hands, her breathless panic in the shelter, or the way she'd whispered safe. Like it was a foreign word. He didn't even glance up when he spoke. Can you hand me that circuit clamp? The small one green handle. Sir's eyes flicked to the table. She picked it up and held it out. Without a word, he took it, gently brushing her fingers by accident. She didn't flinch. Progress, thanks, he said, then returned to working. After a while, he added, you're good at this. Most people don't even know how to hold a tool like that, let alone pick the right one on sight. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of a nearby crate, legs pulled in. I used to help maintain memory cores, she said softly. Delicate work, precision mattered. Oscar looked up, brow lifted. Memory cord, as in systems, no emotional archives. My people, we didn't store data. We stored experiences. Oscar straightened up, interest sparking in his tired eyes. Valerie Wright. She blinked. You know that name? He nodded slowly. Heard stories. Traitor. Said you were wiped out. Said the Valerie were dangerous. She looked away, jaw tightened. Dangerous because we remembered what others wanted to forget. Silence settled between them. Then Oscar said almost cautiously, so how did you survive? Sir's fingers twitched slightly on her knees. I was taken young, before the fires, before the glass fell on the temples. A slaver ship hit one of our lesser moons. I was supposed to carry a diplomat's memory. We transfer them at ceremonies, but they took me. Instead, they thought I was some kind of empathic asset. Oscar swallowed, looking down at the floor. And after that storage silence drugs, they kept me on sedation for years. Said I kept triggering others. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. And for the first time she asked him something. What about you? Why are you here alone on a dust world? Oscar gave a short, humorless laugh. Long story. I want hear it, she said gently. He rubbed the back of his neck. Used to work out on the Terran rim repairs, mostly combat salvage. I was stationed on Novos Prime during the Reclaimer uprisings. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was quieter. There was a girl, my sister Merara. She was in the safe zone, or supposed to be a militia group. Mistook her for a tech smuggler, shot her before I could get to her. I saw her fall from across a plaza, too far to do anything. Sir's gaze was steady, solemn. I'm sorry. She was 16. He said, brightest damn thing I'd ever known. After that I couldn't stay. Left the unit, took every off-world job I could. Eventually found this place dead enough that no one asked questions. They sat in silence for a long moment. Shared pain is a strange thing. It doesn't ease your own, but it reshapes it, makes it less sharp, less alone. Finally, Oscar stood up, stretching. You hungry, sir? And nodded faintly. They shed a simple meal, root stew, stale bread, water, with a slice of something sour. It was quiet, comfortable. Later, as night fell and wind rustled the vines on the outer wall, Oscar pulled an old tin box from a cabinet and set it on the table between them. You strike me as someone who liked Patterns, he said. Sir raised a brow. Slightly inside the box were dozens of tiny mechanical parts, old drive, chips, broken watch gears, magnets, copper thread. He gave her a shrug. Call it puzzle, helps patch. The time, without a word, Sir reached in and began arranging the pieces, connecting shapes, stacking weights, twisting bits, until they aligned into a small kinetic sculpture. The motion was fluid, natural. Like she was remembering something her hands knew better than her mind. Oscar watched, smiling to himself. You were a builder too. Huh, no, we built with meaning. She turned the sculpture gently. It ticked. Once, then spun. Every object held a memory, a story. Oscar picked up a gear and turned it over. And if you didn't want to remember, she paused, then said, then we held it for you. He looked at her like he was seeing something new, not just a survivor, not just a mystery, but someone whole even in pieces. When she finally returned to her room that night, she found a clean date, a pad resting on the bed, not command, not an expectation, just a blank space, a place to write or remember. And that night, Sura did something she hadn't done in years. She dreamed not of cages, not of shadows or screaming stars, but of a fire-lit room, a shared silence, and two broken people trying slowly, quietly to build something beneath the surface. The sun had already slipped below the cliffs, painting the sky in bruised purples and fading gold. Oscar hadn't said much all afternoon, but that wasn't unusual. Some silences between them had begun to feel less like distance and more like shared space. But tonight something was different. He returned from his usual walk, later than usual, boots dusted in red soil, and a strange softness in his expression. Without a word, he stepped into the workshop and held something out to her. A flower. It was small and imperfect, violet petals curling at the edges, silver threads of bioluminescence glowing faintly from the center, fragile, but undeniably beautiful. I found it near the ridge, he said. Thought it looked like you, the way it catches light when no one's looking. Sir stared at it, not moving, not blinking, just stunned. For me? She asked. Oscar gave a small nod. Yes. She reached out slowly, as if expecting it to vanish the moment her skin touched it. Her fingers brushed the stem, warm, alive. The glow shifted to match her own. No one had ever given her a gift before, not freely, not just because. This is mine, she whispered. Only if you want it, Oscar said. She clutched the flower to her chest. Her throat tightened, heat well behind her eyes, sharp and sudden. She shook her head slightly, as if confused by her own reaction. No one ever gave me anything, she murmured, not without wanting something back. Oscar didn't answer. He didn't need to. The tears came without warning. She sank on to the bench beside the console, covering her face with her hands as her shoulders began to shake. It wasn't the loud, gasping kind of grief. It was the kind that had waited for too long, quietly piling up in corners of the soul until it had nowhere else to go. Oscar didn't speak. He didn't try to stop her. He just sat near, close enough to feel, but far enough to let her feel it alone. When she looked up, her face was streaked with tears, and the flower still rested in her hand, her gaze locked with his. And in that moment she crossed a line she didn't even know she'd drawn. She moved to him slowly, deliberately placing one hand on his shoulder, then brushing the other against his jaw. His breath caught, but he didn't flinch. I want to know what it would feel like, she whispered, and then she kissed him, soft, uncertain, trembling, but real. Oscar didn't move at first. Then his hand gently touched her waist, not pulling, just anchoring. When their lips parted and their foreheads rested together, breathing in the same space, Sir's voice trembled. I don't know why I did that. Oscar smiled faintly. I think I do, she exhaled, shaky but lighter. Thank you for the flower. You can keep it, he said. No matter what happens, that stillness might have lasted all night, if not for the soft click of a perimeter alert flashing red near the front hatch. Oscar stood instantly. Stay here, he said, grabbing the old pump action scatter rifle from behind the door. His tone had shifted, calm but focused, protective. But Sir didn't stay. She followed him silently, keeping close. They reached the perimeter fence together. A drone courier, small civilian class, hovered in place, casting a pale red glow across the ground. Its body emitted a soft hum, and a projected message flickered to life above it in bold letters. War filed. Harboring unregistered sentient being. Sura froze. The world tilted beneath her, a free fall into old fear. Oscar stepped forward and activated the decryption pad on the drone side. His eyes scanned the fine print. When he spoke, his voice was flat and clipped. They flagged you. She didn't respond. Try to keep us under the radar. But the Trade Authority must have run a market-wide scan. Your tag came up as unclaimed. That's a red flag for them. Her throat went dry. Are they coming? He didn't answer immediately. Then yes, maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow. But they will. The silence that followed was thick And alive, the wind picked up, rattling the old fencing. Sura looked at him. You should have left me there. Oscar turned to her sharply. Don't say that it's the truth now. They'll come for you too. I don't care. You should. I don't, he said, jaw tied, because for the first time in years I finally gave a damn about someone again. And I'm not walking away from that. Her eyes widened. She wasn't prepared for heat in his voice or the softness in his eyes beneath it. I'm not going to run, she said. I wasn't going to let you. Something between them changed again. The fear didn't vanish, but it had somewhere to go. Now it had room. Oscar looked back at the drone, then tapped the override and shut it down. The hum died. The red glow faded. You turned back to her. Come inside. We need to talk about what we're going to do next. But Sura stepped toward him, hands still holding the flower, her fingers laced into his. And this time he let her lead. The door shut behind them, and outside the stars blinked quietly, watching. Two souls who had stopped running for now. The warning drone didn't come back the next day, but the silence it left behind was worse. Sir moved differently now, more alert, more watchful, not with tension of prey, but with the sharp awareness of someone who knew the hunt had already begun. Oscar didn't say much. He spent the morning reinforcing the door locks, checking the charge on the rifle, updating the local jammer that cloaked their location, practical things, but there was something simmering underneath all of it, frustration maybe, or fear. He wore it in the tightness of his shoulders, and the way his eyes avoided hers. She sat by the window flowers, still resting in a glass by her side, and tried not to let the quiet cracker open, but it did around mid-day. She found him in the workshop, hunched over the console, again rechecking wiring that didn't need checking. You haven't looked at me all day, she said. He didn't answer right away. I'm looking at the problem, he muttered. She tilted her head. And what problem is that? Oscar dropped the tool with a clatter. That the trade authority knows you're here, that they'll send someone eventually, that I don't know how to protect you. Sir's voice dropped cooler than she meant. You think I need protecting? I think the galaxy's built to break people like you. It struck too deep. She stood slowly. People like me, Oscar cursed under his breath, stood and turned toward her. I didn't mean it like that. I just, he ran a hand through his hair, visibly unraveling. You're not just someone I picked up from market. Saw you matter her, and that terrifies me. That stopped her cold. I'm not a burden, she said quietly. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Oscar's hands dropped to his sides. I've already lost someone I couldn't protect. I can't lose you to you. Don't own me, Oscar, she said, voice firm now. You didn't save me like some damsel in distress. I chose to stay, I know that. Then trust me to stand beside you, not behind you. The silence that followed was heavy, emotion thick in the air between them. Finally Oscar exhaled, voice softer. I'm not used to this, having someone caring this much. Sir looked away, jaw tight. Neither am I. He took a step forward, didn't close the distance. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like a weakness. You didn't, she said. You made me feel like a memory. His brow furrowed. Is that bad? She shook her head. No, it's the most dangerous thing someone like me can feel. Oscar didn't move. He just watched her with those storm gray eyes torn between regret and something deeper. A pause passed. I was going to leave, she said, barely more than a whisper after the drone. I thought about slipping away in the night. Oscar's face shifted, pain, panic. Why didn't you? Because of this. She pointed at the flower on the window ledge. Because for the first time in my life someone gave me something and didn't expect a piece of me in return. His voice cracked when he said her name. Sir, I'm scared too, she said, stepping forward, but I won't be kept safe like a relic in a vault. If we run together. If we fight together. But I won't hide from the galaxy again. Oscar looked like he might say something, then just nodded, a slow, understanding kind of nod, the kind that came not for victory, but surrender, not to her, but to them. He reached out, this time taking her hand first. Together, he said, their fingers intertwined. Outside the wind had picked up again, the kind of wind that usually came before something big, something final. But inside they were still standing, cracked, afraid, but not fractured, not anymore. First sign of trouble came at dawn. A ripple of static passed through the perimeter jammer, triggering a low hum that vibrated through the floorboards. Sura sat up instantly, her senses already on edge. Oscar was up before she even moved, scanning the soul on the wall with practiced urgency. Perimeter breach, no ID tags, 5 life forms coming in fast. Sir's blood turned cold. Scouts. Oscar shook his head. No, too many. This is a retrieval team. She was already moving, bare feet across cold floor, pulling on her boots, wrapping the light jacket she'd taken a wearing, not a habit, out of choice. Her choice didn't speak for a moment as the tension in the air thickened. Then Oscar looked at her rifle slung across his back, a pulse grenade in his hand. This is your chance to go. I'll cover the front. You Take the trail through the ridge and don't stop until you reach the comm tower. There's a pilot there, Xena, she owes me no service, said her voice sharp. He blinked. I'm not running without you, Oscar stepped forward, his frustration barely held in check. I'm not asking for a debate, sir. I brought this on you. Let me. She grabbed his wrist. No, her eyes burned not with fear, but with resolve. You didn't bring this on me. I chose to stay. I chose you. And if they want to take me, they'll have to tear us apart for a beat. The world seemed to go still. Oscar exhaled through his nose. The fight left his posture, and in its place came something heavier, understanding. Then we hold them off together. He said they fortified the house as fast as they could. Oscar laid traps at the back entrance. Sarai rewired the drone jammer to send out decoy signals. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask how her fingers moved with precision. Mind clear. The trauma that had once paralyzed her now moved through her like fuel. The sun rose, casting orange light through the haze. The silence before the storm. Then came the sound. Boots on dirt. 5 of them armed, efficient. Oscar stood at the window, with his rifle eyes narrowed. They're not authority, he muttered. Sura looked up. What their mercs contracted no insignia, which means they don't care about protocols. They're here to extract dead or alive. He looked at her, then voice low. They don't know what you are not really. They just want to turn you in and get paid. Sura stepped forward, the flower he'd given her still woven into the laces of her wrist. And then they'll see what Valerie is capable of. He raised an eyebrow. What are you capable of? Her eyes shimmered faintly as her skin lit with bioluminescent lines, stronger, now controlled. I remember pain, she said, but I also remember every kindness, every injustice, every face that turned away. And I'm done hiding from all of it. Oscar couldn't help it. He smiled. Remind me never to piss you off. Then the first blast hit door. The sound shattered the silence. Oscar fired the first shot, a warning. The mercs responded with precision, breaching from his side with a concussive charge. Smoke filled the entryway. Sir ducked behind the workbench, tossing the signal jammer into the hallway. It exploded in a flash of white noise, sending 2 of them stumbling. Oscar dropped one with a clean pulse to the shoulder. Sir charged another, striking with a metal rod she'd sharpened days ago without telling him. She wasn't a soldier, but she wasn't helpless either, and in that chaos, smoke, shouting, fire, something inside her awakened. She didn't fight like a warrior. She moved like a memory, slipping through their reach, always one step ahead. Her empathy wasn't a weakness. It let her anticipate, feel their aggression, turn it against them. Then someone grabbed Oscar from behind the third merc. A brute in black armor slammed him into the console, sending Spar S flying. Sir saw red. She screamed not a sound of fear, but fury, and launched herself at the attacker, landing a blow that cracked his visor. Then Oscar twisted free, kicked the man back, and fired again. 3 down. The last 2 hesitated. 1 raised a communicator. Oscar shot out his hand. The standoff hung in the air, and then they fled. They ran, leaving smoke, silence, and scorched earth behind. Oscar leaned against the wall, breathing hard-blooded, his temple eyes wild. You okay? He asked, voice hoarse. Sura nodded, panting. Her lip was split, her arm bruised, but she was standing. I'm fine. Then she walked over to him, cued his face, and kissed him. This time it wasn't hesitant. It wasn't testing the waters. It was fire and survival and everything they hadn't been allowed to say when they broke apart. She whispered, I'm not property, I'm not cargo, and I am not afraid of who I am anymore. Oscar touched her forehead to his. Then let's make sure no one forgets it. They stood there in the middle of a half-destroyed house, side by side, and when the next drone flew overhead, scanning the ruins, it didn't register a surrender, it registered freedom, because Sura and Oscar weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting for the right to live on their own terms together. They didn't wait for the second wave. By sunrise, the fires in the hills were still smoldering, and a scent of scorched metal clung to the air. The mercenaries had been just a preview. Oscar knew that the next group would be bigger, better equipped, and less inclined to leave survivors, so they ran, or rather, they left with purpose. The old desert runner Oscar kept buried under the shed sparked a life after just 2 tries. Miracle given its rusted panels and age. He tossed her a bag of supplies. She caught it midair, no longer hesitating, no longer wondering. If she had the right, they rode fast and quiet across the ridge. Engines low, systems scrambled. By the time the sun was at its peak, the city walls came into view, tall and grim, surrounded by landing pads and watchtowers. No one walked in the open here. This was trance. It hub, not a home, a place where people came to disappear or pay for the privilege of pretending they didn't exist. Sura kept her hood up, head low, eyes sharp. Oscar walked beside her like someone who belonged. Dusty jacket, confidence, stride the calm of a man with nothing left to lose. They passed a checkpoint without issue. Oscar flashed an outdated but convincing ID, and the guard barely looked. Twice Sir's heart pounded the whole way through, but no alarm sounded. Not yet. Zay's workshop sat in the shadow of a half-collapsed comm tower. Hidden in plain sight, the sign above the hangar blinked in 6 different languages, and no questions, no refunds. The woman herself was leaning under the belly of a compact cargo hauler, her legs sticking out, and a plasma torch sparking like fireworks. She didn't move. When Oscar called her name, Xena, from under the ship, came a voice laced with smoke and sarcasm. If that's a debt collector, tell them I'm dead. It's me. Z out, goggles pushed up on her forehead, revealing a face aged by solar burns, cigarette scars, and too many bad deals. When she saw Oscar, her expression softened just a little. Damn, I thought you'd have drunk yourself into a crater by now. Almost did. Then her eyes landed on Sura. They narrowed, assessing this. Her Oscar nodded. Xena exhaled. All right, how bad? Trade Authority contracted bounty. MK's already made a move. Xena whistled low. You really know how to pick him. She didn't pick this. Sir Steve forward. I need to get off. WHL. Zaire raised a brow. You both do now. Oscar glanced at Sura. She nodded. Once Xena rubbed her face, muttered a string of curses in at least 3 languages, then gestured to the hauler. I've got a short-range jump set for Nero K5. It's out of authority. Reach from there. You're on your own. You've got an hour before my window closes. They worked fast. Oscar helped load fuel cells while Xena calibrated the nav system. Sarah rewired the security protocols to bypass authority beacons. It felt coordinated, like they'd done this before, like they could do this. As the ship began its final startup sequence, Xena pulled Oscar aside. You sure about this? She asked quietly. You're burning every bridge you had left. You disappear with her and you don't come back. Oscar didn't hesitate at I don't need to come back. Xena stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a dry laugh. You know, I still remember that day. Years ago, I was cornered by Trade Patrol outside Thierbelt, had 2 crates of illegal sensory tech in my hold, no transponder, no permit. They were going to impound the ship, or throw me out an airlock. To save on paperwork. Oscar's brow furrowed slightly, his voice low. You never told me what happened after. Xena shrugged. Didn't need to. You already saved my ass. Some non-aim mechanic with clearance codes you weren't supposed to have. You could have turned me and walked away clean. But instead you wiped my ID, scrambled 3 satellites, and told me. What was it? She smirked, her voice turning almost soft. Flag like you matter. Oscar looked down, the memory flickering across his face. You gave me freedom that day. She said. Didn't even know my name. She glanced at the ship where Suro was rapping into the co-pilot's seat, the faint blue glow of her skin reflecting off the glass. And now you're doing it again, just for someone else. This time Oscar met her eyes. She's not someone else. She's everything. Xena held his gaze for a moment longer, then she smiled, lopsided and a little sad. Then you better make sure you don't break her. Go. They boarded just as the warning klaxons started echoing across the city. Authority patrols too late to stop them, but close enough to make escape a gamble. Oscar threw himself into the pilot's seat. Sir's hands hovered over the controls, waiting. He looked at her. You ready? She smiled, small but real. I'm not afraid anymore. The ship launched engines screamed as they tore through the atmosphere, dodging beacon locks and scrambling signals. Sir's fingers danced over the nav pad. Sharp and confident, Oscar handled the defense grid. Zaya, the ship shuddered under pressure, but held steady, and then they jumped. One blink, one breath, gone into the black. The stars were different out here, colder, sharper, but also clearer, like someone had wiped the sky clean. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Oscar leaned back, exhaled, and let his head fall against the wall. Well, he muttered. That was a hell of a way to say good. Bye. Sir looked at him, her expression unreadable. It wasn't bye, she said. He glanced at her. She was holding the flower again. Somehow, in all the chaos, she protected it. Pressed between pages of the book he'd given her, it was bent, a little crushed, but still glowing softly. She met his eyes. It was the first thing that was ever mine. I want you to know. I chose this. I chose you. Oscar blinked slowly, as if her words needed time to reach every part of him. I didn't think I deserved that. You didn't have to. They sat in silence, a while longer, staring out at the stars. Finally, Sarah spoke again. You gave me freedom, Osar, not just from them, from everything, from a belief that I was nothing. You were never nothing. I didn't know that until you looked at me like I was something. Oscar didn't answer right away. He reached into the storage panel beside him, pulled out something small wrapped in cloth. He handed it to her. What is this? A new memory, he said, to carry if you want. She unwrapped it. Inside was a small carved pendant, rough hand Shaped, it was etched with a symbol she recognized from Valari ritual markings, her people's symbol for rebirth. Her hands trembled. She looked at him, blinking hard. "I thought you didn't believe in symbols." "I don't," Oscar said, "but I believe in you." And that was everything. They arrived on Nero K5 a day later. A small moon, quiet, remote, no authorities, no records, no questions. They didn't stay hidden, they lived. They built a little home near the cliffside where wild windflowers grew in the cracks between stones. Sir taught them, children of the village, how to recognize emotional resonance in plants and stones. Oscar fixed broken generators, patched ships, and once a week played cards at the market, and always lost. And on their roof, under alien stars, they kissed like they were still running, but now toward something, toward each other. It was one of those mornings that came softly, the kind where the air was just cool enough to carry the scent of distant blossoms, and the breeze moved like it didn't want to disturb the peace. The sky above Nero K5 was washed in pale gold clouds, hanging like scattered memories across the cliffs. Oscar stood in the garden, boots half laced, a spade in one hand, forgotten. He was staring at the house, not because something was wrong, but because something was right. Sir had stepped outside a few minutes ago, barefoot in the warm dirt, the edges of her robe catching in the wind. She wasn't glowing, at least not in the usual way, not from her bioluminescent skin, or faint light trailed on her collarbone. No, this was different. She was beaming. He could feel it. Before she spoke, she looked at him from across the garden, her hands folded just below her stomach. Her smile was quiet, knowing. A little afraid, but mostly hopeful. He dropped the spade without thinking, crossed the space between them in 4 long steps. She didn't say the words, she didn't have to. Oscar looked at her eyes, wide, already welling with the kind of emotion he didn't usually let surface. "You're sure?" he asked, barely able to get the words out. Sir nodded, a small laugh escaping her. "I checked 3 times the scans. They're clear." He reached out as if she were made of light, resting his hand against her stomach. No bump, yet no sign of change, but he felt it, the future, a life. They had created something that never should have been possible according to the science, according to the genetics, according to the past, and yet here they were alive together and expecting. Sura looked up at him with misty eyes. "I did think, I mean, after everything, I wasn't supposed to be able to." He kissed her. Before she could finish, it wasn't a heated kiss, not desperate or frantic like those early ones back when they were still learning how to be safe in each other's orbit. No, this one was full of silence, of awe, of gratitude. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against her hands, still on her belly. "A kid," he whispered. "We're going to have a kid." Sir nodded again. And now she was crying, too, a good kind, the kind that meant something had been healed, even if the scar were still there. This did like that, for while in the breeze and the golden morning, 2 people who'd spent most of their lives in shadows, finally learning how to live in the light. Later that day, Sir sat by the cliff's side with a blank page and the carved pendant Oscar had given her. She traced the Valari symbol for rebirth onto the page, then beneath it another glyph, the ancient word for hope. When she finished, she looked out at the valley where windflowers danced in the sun and smiled. The past would always be a part of them, but now the future had a heartbeat.